or anything like that. When you're in a passionate relationship, everything right happens just naturally. When you're passionate about Jesus, you don't want to sin. You don't want to do the wrong thing. I mean, your wanter changes when you're passionate. You want the right things and you don't want the wrong things. It's just the most natural thing in the world. But listen, when the passion leaves, you cannot legislate a right relationship. You can't do it. Read the Old Testament. In the Old Testament, it is a case study in the fact that God can't relate to us through the law. In the Old Testament, God came to a bunch of disinterested people. The Jewish people largely were disinterested in God. There were some, King David and others, who loved God, and there were bright moments in Israel's history where, they fell in love with God. But generally speaking, they were disinterested. And God came and gave them law after law after law after law. Pages and... of law. And what the New Testament tells us is it was a great failure. God could not relate to Israel through the law. There's only one way that God can relate to us, and that is through passion. The only way that our relationship with God is going to stay right is if we're in a passionate, prioritized relationship with Him. By the way, it's one of the most important needs in our life, is a passionate, prioritized relationship with Jesus. Let me say another thing about the issue of passion. Did you know it's the most attractive thing of our faith to an unbeliever? There are many religions in the world today, and they're all telling people that they have the truth. Did you know most people who are unbelievers, they really don't know truth from non-truth? But let me tell you what they know. They know passion. You know, if you're talking to a friend that ate at a restaurant, and you said to this friend, hey, did you like the food at that restaurant? And they went, yeah, it's okay. You going to go eat at that restaurant? You know why? Because the best source in the world is someone who's experienced it. If people look at our lives and see us bored with Jesus, and see us, those of us who call ourselves Christians, experiencing Christ, but our response to the King of Glory is, it's okay. Do you think people are going to stand in line to get that? Jesus said, they'll know you're my disciples if you have passion for each other. Because passionate love is the hallmark of God Himself. God is love. And He's not just love, He's passionate love. Our God is a God of passion that loves us so much that He came from heaven down and took our place on the cross so we could be reunited in a passionate relationship with Him. He's worthy of our passion. He's worthy of our love. He's worthy of first place in our life, and no one else is worthy. And so when you talk about passion and why would Jesus come to the church at Ephesus and say to them, this one problem that you have is so serious that I'm going to remove your lampstand. Why would Jesus say something like that? It's because everything in the Christian life flows from the headwaters of our relationship with Jesus Christ. And when something is wrong with our relationship with Jesus Christ, everything else suffers. And everything else is wrong. This is everything. So let's go back for just a minute to the book of Revelation, and I want to talk about 3 of the problems that we have with passion. When Jesus comes to the church, in the book of the churches in the book of Revelation, He's talking to them about different issues, but 3 of them He talks about the issue of passion. The church at Ephesus, Revelation 2 again, verse 4, nevertheless I have this against you, that you have left your first love. Remember therefore from where you have fallen, repent and do the first works, or else I'll come to you quickly and remove your lampstand from its place unless you repent. Well, here's the first problem with passion, and it's dutiful neglect. It's dutiful neglect. Now, let's talk about a married couple for just a minute. When people fall in love, they fall in love because they focus on each other. When they fall out of love, it's because they institutionalize the relationship. When I fell in love with Karen, I didn't fall in love with her checkbook. I didn't fall in love with her credit score. I didn't look at her and say, man, what a great figure. I bet she can do housework. People don't fall in love, folding clothes and watching Wheel of Fortune. You just don't do that. You fall in love because you are engaged with another individual. You fall in love with an individual. And as long as that individual is the focus, passion stirs and the relationship grows until you begin to institutionalize the relationship. And now it's no longer about you and me. It's about the kids and the mortgage and work and housework and all of those things, all the things that surrounded our relationship. It began about you and me. But around us came kids, and around us came a mortgage, and around us came all these other trappings of our relationship, and it was about us. But now it's about those things. You've institutionalized the relationship. Jesus comes to the church at Ephesus, and He says to them, you're great with the house. You're doing a great job with kids. I mean, you're just great. The only problem is, what about me? This is not about them. It's about us. Listen, when you and Jesus are okay, everything's okay. Isn't that the truth? When we're okay with Jesus, everything is okay. So when we're not good with Jesus, nothing else is going to be right. That's what He understands. And so He tells them how to get the first love back. And so He gives them instruction. Listen, it is possible to live in a dynamic relationship for the rest of your life. You can have a marriage that is ascending and growing for the rest of your married life. You can have a relationship with Jesus that is growing for the rest of your life. If you've lost your passion, you can get that passion back easily for your marriage and for Jesus. And it doesn't mean manipulating your emotions or hyping yourself up or doing anything weird. It just requires doing what Jesus said. And here's what Jesus said. Remember where you fell from. Remember where you fell from. And He's calling to remembrance the beginning of the relationship. I got saved at 19 years old. I had lived in deep, deep sin and rebellion until I was 19 years old. And at 19 years old, old, I had an emptiness and a sadness in my life that nothing could cure. All my immoralities, all the alcohol, everything that I was involved in, nothing could make me happy. I had a hole in my heart. And one day I called on Jesus and He stepped into my heart, and overnight I felt happy, I felt free, I felt like I had a reason to live, and I fell in love with Jesus Christ. That's where I started. That's where I started. It always starts with Jesus. It always starts with Him coming into our lives and assuming something that no one else could assume, and that is the role of filling this empty void and making us feel like somebody. It's about Jesus. And what happens is we fell in love with Him, and then we become Christians and we learn the lingo and we get involved in church, which is absolutely essential and critical. And before long, what you know is we're now in a plateau phase. Easy, comfortable, status quo, familiar. We're not pursuing, we're not seeking. It's not the same as it once was. There's not sacrifice in the relationship. And I'm not talking about money, I'm talking about time. I'm talking about heart. I'm talking about emotion. We're not seeking and pursuing the way that we once did. And the song that we sang just a minute ago, it says, when I seek you, I find you, and when I find you, I love you. When I seek you, when I take the time and energy to seek you, I find you, and when I find you, I love you. And that's the secret of a relationship with Jesus Christ. She said, remember where you fell from? I mean, when I fell in love with Karen, I was 16 years old in biology class in high school. And I mean, Karen sat in front of me in class, and I just thought she was dating some jerk senior. And I ran him off finally. And I just thought she was beautiful. I really did. And when our first date was to a Three Dog Night concert. And they're making a comeback. Don't laugh. They look really bad, but they're making a comeback. And I was a mess, boy. I was 16 years old, and I had a 1964 Dynamic 88 Oldsmobile that my mother had wrecked, almost totaled, wiped out one entire side, and then gave to me without repairing it. And the night that I picked Karen up, I remember I worked at Scrub It Up Car Wash, $1.60 an hour. And I took my car through the car wash. I went home. I only had like 2 pairs of pants and 2 shirts, but I put the best one on. Scrubbed up, cleaned up, went to pick her up, and I parked on the good side of the car, so she couldn't see the bad side. It was months before she knew there was a wrecked side of my car because I was so careful to park it where she never had to see the other side. Isn't that what we do? And I was smitten with her.